All right, y'all, welcome back to lesson 4, which is covering day 3 of our study in Genesis. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. And God said, "Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together in one place, and let the dry land appear, and it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas, and God saw that it was good." So did God create the water and the land? It does seem, if you jump straight to verse 2, seems like the land and the sea is already there, but no, God created the land and the sea. He didn't do it on day 3, though. He just gathered the water to one place. He did it actually in the first verse when God created the heavens and the earth. So yes, God created the water and the land. He didn't create it on day 3, but instead he created it in verse 1. We see just here on day 3, we see a gathering of the waters and dry land appearing. So we see the earth was without form and void. As we go back to the very beginning here, though the earth was already created when God had began to hover over the waters. The Septuagint uses the words unsightly and unfurnished. All right. Why did he gather the waters together? So God gathers the waters together. There's something special and unique in this. So when God gathers the water, this is actually a call back to, one of the Egyptian gods, the god Nun, who was god of the waters, which is kind of seen as the underworld or the chaos. And so God's calling back to what they had probably heard for hundreds of years in Egypt, and he's saying, no, these are false gods. They don't have power. I have power over the water. I can gather the water. He showed it even when he parted the Red Sea for the Israelites to go through. He also showed it in Joshua parting the Jordan River. And even when Jesus was here on earth, he spoke to the storm and calmed the waves, right? So God is showing that he has power over this water. This is a little bit of in a contrast to what the Jewish people are used to hearing from Egypt and from a lot of false religions when they talk about the chaos waters. So we see this symbolism of the sea. It does represent chaos and disorder. Go back to the very beginning. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, right? We also see in Revelations it's used as the peoples, nations, and multitudes. So the angel said to me, the waters that you saw where the prostitute is seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and languages. And lastly, we see water being used for cleansing and purification. Here in Ephesians chapter 5, husband, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of the water with the word. So here we again see an example of water being used as a cleansing purpose. Isaiah 43, thus says the Lord, who makes a way in the sea, a path in the mighty waters, who brings forth chariot and horse, army and warrior. They lie down, they cannot rise, they are extinguished, quenched like a wick. Remember not the former things, nor consider the things of old. Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. So we see here God's talking about his power over this chaos and the power over these waters. And it's in stark contrast to what a lot of the false religions and pagan religions of that time believed. They would sacrifice to these false idols so they would have a safe journey and they would have appease the water gods or the sea gods. But here's God's clearly saying, I'm over these. I have the power of those. Here in Isaiah, was it not you who dried up the sea, the waters of the great deep, who made the depths of the sea a way for the redeemed to pass over? So this is something a little more deep here, right? You see God gathering the water so that dry land can appear, but it's more than just creating dry ground. It's more than gathering the seas just to have a separation of land and water. It's also a theological statement from the Lord saying, I control this chaos, this pre-creation chaos. I can bring order to it. And it's the same for our lives and same for things that we're going through. That's why the popular, when Jesus calmed the storm, right? He We have storms in our life that Jesus can speak peace to, right? These external things, this world falls in line into what the Lord commands. And so we can have a peace for that, right? Because he commands these things for our good and our purpose. Where we can see here the depths of this, he made the depths of the sea, even that, when they crossed the Red Sea, I made it for the redeemed to pass over. He can do the same in our life. All right, day 3. So we have a bonus creation here. All right, this is one of the things. He gathers the waters together, dry land appears, and then on the dry land, he creates vegetation. Verse 11. And God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees, bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to its kind on the earth. And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kinds, and trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the third day. So here we see the first half of creation, right? The first 3 of the 6 days of creation, 7th day he rested. And you see God took the chaos and he formed it. He brought order to it. And so once he's brought order to it, he's formed it, in the next 3 days, he's going to fill it. So we'll get there when we get there. A little interesting note here, you have the day of double blessing, right? You have this day of double blessing. We talked about on Monday, on the second day, God didn't say it was good. However, on day 2, he says it was good twice. And that was why, in my understanding, in Jewish tradition, a lot of weddings are done on Tuesday because it's a day of double blessing, the third day. And we reference this when Jesus was turned the water into wine. He was at a wedding that was on the third day, right? They commonly did that. Here's just for your reference, so you can kind of see, because Chuck Missler has a great illustration. He has a necklace on, and he said it's black and white beads, and he says what happens is he dropped this case of black and white beads, and as he picked them up and put them on the string randomly, it actually created a Morse code necklace that says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So you have on your left here, this is an example of a Morse code bracelet. So Chuck Missler's necklace was 357 beads, and it actually was Morse code that spelled out the first verse. Now, this necklace is a binary code, and it's a string of 347 elements. And so the probability of his story happening, the probability of him dropping black and white beads, picking them up randomly to decipher this code is 10 to the 104th power. So just as a little bit of a reference there, our hemoglobin molecule is an alphabet of 20 with 574 elements, right? And so that would be the probability of that happening would be 10 to the 650th power. And so we're seeing here this probability of life, because as God created the plants, what we have unique here too is life. Plants don't have the breath of life like animals and man do, and then man has even spirit over in which animals don't, but there still is DNA, there still is life even in plants. And so we see the probability of this happening is very, very slim. Here's DNA, the alphabet of 200 with 3 billion elements. Here's the probability of DNA happening correctly. So you see, even this necklace, right? And rightfully so, you would say, no, there's no way you picked those up randomly and it's spelled out in Morse code. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. There's no way that happened. And you'd be right, because actually, this is what's considered absurd probability, right? And that you can see that's 10 to the negative 50th power. And here's necklace, you have 10 to the 104th. So this is double what would be considered absurd. And this is actually the term mathematically impossible. This is where they say, sure, technically we could 1 in so many chances, but this right here is where they say, no, anything past this, it's impossible for that to have happened by chance. And just so we reference here, this is mathematically impossible. What they would say is impossible. And here is the probability of life comparing the two, right? You have absurd probability, the probability of life. It's astronomically greater. It is 20 times impossible for life to have happened without some sort of designer, without some sort of creator. All the molecules we see in plants and the DNA we see, and even in plants, it's just to think of it happening without a creator is absurd. And here too, what's interesting is you can look up, and what science will say is that the life is energy and matter, right? Life is this complex state of matter that involves energy too, and sometimes there's some chemical interactions, and so within this, they try to say this is what life is, and it's not true. They know it's not true as well. So here's another way of explaining it. They're saying life is energy and matter, but life does not equal energy and matter, and I'll give you an illustration here in a minute that will explain that. But what we have really is life equals energy and matter and information, which is our DNA and other things like that, where we see these things can't come from just anywhere. And that's why the world tries to leave that out. They try to explain information in a way that's not what it is, which is information. And life comes from energy and matter, but it has to have information as well. And so here's an example. Chuck Missler, again, gives this good example. He said that you could buy a sealed jar of peanut butter. You have matter. In fact, you have organic matter on top of that. And the jars themselves are clear. And so energy, as light goes into those, they will collect energy. You have matter and energy in every single sealed peanut butter jar. But if you open it up, there is no life ever. No life never, ever comes from that. What you have to do is you have to add information. You have to add life into it for it to sprout something. Let's say you were to open a peanut butter jar and you do see something growing in it. Most likely it got contaminated. Some information got in there, and that's how you would have some sort of mold or bacteria or something like that. And so we see it every time we go to a grocery store. You buy a peanut butter jar. Life doesn't come from energy and matter. How many jars have they made in the history of the world? Millions, billions, trillions of peanut butter jars. None of them have ever produced life because they lack the information. And that comes from the Lord, right? That comes from this. It's impossible for that to have just happened by chance. It comes from the Lord. Here in John chapter 1, we say, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not come over it. So I think maybe this is a cool little picture here. I think maybe if you've seen this before, this is actually under a microscope. They were able to zoom in and actually see when an egg became fertilized. And there's this burst of light that appears in this egg. It's called a zinc spark. But here's a video of it. You can actually see it happening. And so you got this flash of light that comes as soon as life is created, right? As soon as you have these energy and you have this matter, but when God brings the information in, then you get life, and that life produces light. We see that from the very beginning. And Jesus says, I am that life, right? This is Jesus talking to Martha at the tomb of Lazarus. He says, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? And so we got here, right? Jesus telling his disciples and all his followers that he is the light of the world. He is the life. He's the source of this, right? Go back to day one. God said, let there be light. That light comes from Christ, right? It comes from his being, this light that overcomes the darkness, and we are supposed to be images of that light. We're supposed to show the world this life and this light that they can have. And here's Jesus talking to his disciples. I am the light of the world. Anyone who follows me will never walk in the darkness, but will have the light of life. So we see that God, though it would be impossible without him to have created life, and we see this light that sparks when life is created. We can be that light to the world, right? We can reflect Christ, the light that Christ is to the world, so we can lead others out of darkness. And so that's what I think we're called to do here. And we see even in day 3 of creation, this creating life within plants. We haven't even gotten to the animals and man yet, but we see this call to be the light to the world. And so I'm going to challenge you. Are you being a light to the world? Right? You are born again. God has given you life. If you put your faith in Jesus Christ, we're to show that light to the world, to lead others out of darkness. All right, that's it for this time. Y'all have a good day. Bye.